Do you struggle financially? You want to prosper financially, but you don't know what to do to get started. Do you ever wonder how millionaires make their fortune? If yes, the series of animated reviews of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad at YouTube channel Mr. Smart is for you. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a book which Robert Kiyosaki has written like a story based on his own life. This book teaches simple, yet very effective principles of money, investment, and business. This book is the best-selling personal finance book of all times, with around 30 million copies sold in more than 100 countries. This book is translated in more than 50 languages. Robert Kiyosaki had two fathers, one rich dad and the other poor dad. Poor Dad was the biological father of Robert Kiyosaki, while Rich Dad was his mentor. Poor Dad was very brilliant in studies, while the Rich Dad was smart about money. Both dads were hard-working, but their frame of mind about earning and spending was entirely different from each other's. For example, Poor Dad would often say, "I cannot afford it," while the Rich Dad believed in, "How can I afford it?" By saying "I cannot afford it," you stop your mind from working and devising a strategy to improve your finances, as opposed to it when you say, "How can I afford it?" You embark on the journey to financial success and freedom. These are the small things that make the big difference. The series of animations will explore these differences. YouTube channel Mr. Smart presents you the first ever complete series of animated reviews of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Mr. Smart and hit the bell button for notifications if you want to be smart in money matters, like the Rich Dad. It is totally free. Mr. Smart often explores why the people are poor. Keeping the political debate aside, let us understand why the people are poor from an economic and behavioral point of view. Are the people poor because of their own behavior or adverse circumstances? Mr. Smart thinks that the reality is in between these two extremes. Sometimes people make their circumstances adverse by their own behavior and negligence. For instance, a spoiled child may end up living in a makeshift home after losing all his inherited wealth in gambling. However, we can find many cases in which adverse circumstances induce poverty and negligent behavior. For example, we cannot expect much from a kid raised by a drug-addicted single mother who got pregnant in her teenage years. Later, she supported herself by prostituting and selling drugs. But what actually is poverty? The World Bank defines $1.9 a day as the poverty line. It means that any person having less than $1.9 a day is extremely poor. According to the World Bank estimates, around 700 million people around the globe are living under this poverty line. Certainly, there is much difference between the poverty threshold of the developed and the developing countries. For example, in the USA, this poverty line is around $12,228 per annum, or $33.5 a day for an individual. As per this poverty threshold, around 40 million people live in poverty in the USA. Mr. Smart thinks that government and parents both have vital roles to play in this regard. Government needs to provide a level playing field to all citizens by ensuring health facilities and education. On the other hand, parents should feed and supervise their kids till they can earn and support themselves. In this way, there will be more educated and employed youth. This will ensure steady income through employment. But Mr. Smart wants you to not stop dreaming big after gaining secure employment and steady income. Dear viewers, what is your opinion about the causes of poverty? Is poverty induced internally because of individual behavior and orientation? Or are there more external factors like poor health care and inadequate educational facilities that cause poverty? Your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart are eager to listen to your opinion in the comment section. Dear viewers, this animated review series is not a substitute of the original book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which Robert Kiyosaki has written like a story based on his own life. This book is the best-selling personal finance book of all times, with around 30 million copies sold in more than 100 countries. This book is translated in more than 50 languages. This book is a must-read for aspiring entrepreneurs who are currently entrapped in the rat race of get up, go to a job, and pay bills. Mr. Smart highly recommends you to thoroughly read this book. British philosopher and statesman Francis Bacon once said, "Some books should be tasted, some devoured, but only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly." Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one such phenomenal book which should be chewed and digested. You can find the link in the description for the audio version as well as the hard copy of this book. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button below. Don't hesitate if you have any question about personal finance. Moreover, let us know of which personal finance book you want reviewed next. Mr. Smart would love your questions and suggestions. Subscribe to your very own YouTube channel, Mr. Smart, and hit the bell button for notifications. It's totally free. In the last episode, we explored the causes, extent, and remedies of poverty. Now let us move a step further to not only end poverty, but also seek financial freedom. When people start to have a steady income, they immediately increase their expenses. Soon they get entrapped in the rat race of get up, go for a job, and pay bills, regardless of the amount of money they earn every month. Firstly, they work to materialize the dreams of their employer. Secondly, they work for government by paying taxes. Thirdly, they work for the bank which owns their mortgages and credit card loans. They work for everyone else. They put a little, if any, money in the asset column. That is precisely the reason they remain struggling in middle class. But Mr. Smart expects you to break these shackles and seek financial freedom. So you should rather pay yourself first by putting a sizable part of your earnings in the asset column and spend what is left. That is the only way you can come out of the rat race of get up, go for a job, and pay bills in the long run. Mr. Smart divides the concept of paying yourself first into two parts. Firstly, set aside a sizable portion of your monthly income and spend only what is left. Secondly, buy assets that generate money without your personal presence and efforts. Stocks, bonds, and housing units which generate rental income are examples of such assets which make passive income for you. Many personal finance experts do not give the essential importance to this second part of paying yourself first. For them, savings are an end in itself. You may keep your savings in a separate bank account till you have saved enough money to buy income-producing assets. But Mr. Smart would never recommend you to keep your savings in a savings account forever, which can barely beat inflation. Your money will rot in a bank. You should rather invest your money in your financial learning and training. You should invest money in real estate, stocks or bonds, after due diligence and necessary training and experience. A brave but wise investor neither becomes a Chicken Little who is afraid of even an iota of risk, nor makes a blind investment. He rather manages risk creatively. And the ability to identify and manage risk creatively develops after experience, failures, and hardships. So, your friend, Mr. Smart, advises you to start investing early in life and increase your portfolio of income-generating assets gradually. Now, it is pertinent to ask how much an ambitious person who is currently entrapped in the rat race should save every month. It varies from one individual to another. It can be difficult for one individual to save even 5% of his monthly income, while the other may save a substantial portion of his income every month. Here, Mr. Smart needs to highlight that paying yourself first is entirely different from spending on you first. Paying yourself first means to set aside a portion of your monthly income before spending on anything, including your very basic necessities. If your income is barely enough to meet your living expense, then take a leap further by seeking a second job. Mr. Smart admits that it's easier said than done, but you don't have any choice if your target is financial freedom. So get the second job and save all the additional income to buy passive income producing assets. Repeat this cycle over and over again. In a few years, you will not only free yourself from the rat race, but also seek financial freedom. Here comes the point when your guide, Mr. Smart, wants you to stop working for money. Yes, you've heard that right. Stop working for money. Now, you should rather make money work for you. You may keep or leave your daytime job, but you must not essentially work for money. Mr. Smart will explore this phenomenon deeper in the next episode. Now let us summarize what you have learned in this episode. Paying yourself first has two parts. Firstly, set aside a sizable portion of your monthly income and spend only what is left. Secondly, buy assets that generate money without your personal presence and efforts. 1. You can keep your savings in a separate bank account until you've saved enough money to buy an income-producing asset. 2. Don't be afraid of risk. Rather, manage risk creatively. 3. Invest your time, money, and energy in your financial training and learning. 4. Increase your portfolio of income-generating assets gradually. 5. If your income is barely enough to meet your living expense, get a second job and save all the additional income to buy passive income-producing assets. Dear viewers, have you seen anyone around you who's the true depiction of rags to riches? If yes, let your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart know by posting a comment. They would love to hear from you. Make money without working? Is it real? Yes, it is very much possible, but it needs financial intelligence, guts, and experience. Mr. Smart is your companion in your journey to seek this financial freedom and success. In the first 2 episodes of this series, Mr. Smart has explored the causes, extent, and remedies of poverty. He has also demonstrated how to pay yourself first and what to do with your savings rather than rotting them in bank accounts. Now, let us learn from Mr. Smart to make money without working. You limit yourself when you work for money, so there's no point to work for money if you don't like to work that way. You should rather make money work for you. But what does it mean to make money work for you? It means to invest money in assets which produce passive income without your presence. Traditional education institutions teach us how to work for money by becoming an efficient employee. Contrarily, financially intelligent people prefer to learn how to make money work for them. However, there are always big challenges in learning to make money work for us. It is not an overnight process. Yes, it is a complete process, which may stretch over years. The first step in this journey to financial freedom is paying yourself first, the way Mr. Smart elaborated it in the last episode. A link to this episode is given in the description. Paying yourself first and increasing your financial literacy should go hand in hand. Mr. Smart will discuss financial literacy in detail in the next episode. Also, start buying income-generating assets after due diligence in a gradual way. Mr. Smart knows that you will fall on the ground many times in this process, but it is a part of this money game. Failures and hardships make a seasoned and experienced investor. Ultimately, you will achieve 3 targets: financial literacy, experience in a handsome portfolio of passive income-producing assets. That is the point when you will not need to work for money. Rather, money will work for you. Your rental apartments, commercial buildings, farmland, stocks, commodities, or bonds will make you money. So you will be making money without working. But this does not mean that you will not have to take care of your assets. You will need to be as vigilant as a shepherd who guards a herd of sheep. You would need to maintain your rental apartments and commercial buildings. You would also track the performance of stocks you keep. But you will not be working for money. You will be taking care of assets which produce money for you. Mr. Smart will love to see you attaining this financial freedom and success. Another important step to make money work for you efficiently is to get out of the trap of fear and greed. It is the fear of losing money and the greed of making more money. Fear of losing money will paralyze you when you come across a superb financial deal, while the greed of more money will entrap you in a transaction which promises you unrealistically high gains. Now let us summarize what you have learned in this episode. 1. Making money work for you means to invest money in assets which produce passive income without your presence. 2. But it needs financial literacy, experience, and training. 3. This journey to financial freedom may stretch over years. 4. Ultimately, your rental apartments, commercial buildings, farmland, stocks, commodities, or bonds will make you money. 5. This does not mean that you will not have to take care of your assets. 6. You will be taking care of assets which produce money for you. 7. You would also need to overcome fear of losing money and the greed of making more money. Dear viewers, do you wish to achieve such financial freedom that you don't need to work for money? If yes, what is your plan of action after watching this video? Let your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart know about your aspirations in the comments section. They would love to hear from you. In the first 3 episodes, Mr. Smart has discussed in detail about poverty, paying yourself first, and making money without work. Now, let us answer this question. What is financial literacy? Financial literacy is the ability to make smart financial decisions which result into desired financial outcomes. It is not about knowing the stats and complex financial concepts. It is simply the ability to make right financial decisions in personal finance. It is quite possible that a college dropout is more financially literate and successful than a PhD or MBA. In fact, educational institutions focus only on scholastic and professional training. They do not teach about money and finances. That is the reason why so many brilliant physicians, engineers, accountants, lawyers, artists, and civil servants struggle in their financial life. They know how to earn money, but they don't know how to manage money well. Schools and colleges train kids to be hardworking and diligent employees who follow rules and procedures. So the financial training is entirely left to parents. Or the cold, practical world teaches the basic lessons of money in a hard way. Why not start educating yourself about money matters and learn these skills in a soft way? Otherwise, the rich will continue to get richer and the poor poorer. The rich will surely teach their kids the financial matters themselves, while the poor kids will never learn these lessons. Let us exercise our mind to grow it like a bodybuilder exercises his muscles in a gym. Some people misunderstand that money is wealth. But money may come and go. The only sustainable wealth is financial education, experience, and training. This wealth will never leave you. If you go broke sometime in your life and lose all your money, you can acquire even more money by your financial education, acumen, and training. That is your real wealth. Concept of assets and liabilities is a cornerstone of financial education and literacy. It is a necessity to understand an income statement and balance sheet to fully grasp the concept of assets and liabilities. Income statements show earnings and expenses over a period of time, such as a month or a year. Balance sheets must balance assets on one hand and liabilities plus equity on the other hand at a point in time. Here, an asset in the balance sheet will produce income which is recorded in the income statement, while a liability in the balance sheet will create an expense which is again recorded in the income statement. Your target should be buying income-creating assets. Your house in which you are living is not an income-producing asset. If you have availed a loan from the bank to buy this house, you will pay a mortgage to the bank every month. Even if you've bought your house without any loan, your house will incur expense to maintain it. Only a house which is producing rental income is an income-producing asset. It is certainly good to own the house in which you are living, but it is even better to own a house which is producing passive income for you. Knowing the difference between assets and liabilities is one of the important concepts which make you financially literate. There are many other concepts like budgeting, savings, insurance, and debt, which you should properly understand to make smart financial decisions. Mr. Smart will make a complete series of animated lessons for you about financial literacy. Once it is uploaded, its link will be given in the description. Now let us summarize what you have learned in this episode. 1. Financial literacy is the ability to make smart financial decisions which result in desired financial outcomes. 2. Educational institutions focus only on scholastic and professional training. They do not teach about money and finances. 3. The only sustainable wealth is financial education and training. 4. An asset in the balance sheet will produce income which is recorded in the income statement, while a liability in the balance sheet will create an expense which is again recorded in the income statement. Dear viewers, do you think that financial literacy is necessary for financial freedom and success? Is it necessary to earn an MBA to be financially smart? Or is a degree in finance or business education a guarantee that you can make financially smart decisions? Do you want a complete series of animated lessons about financial literacy? Let Mr. Smart know about your opinion. Your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart would love to hear from you in the comments section. Do you want to become wealthy? If yes, you should simply mind your own business. But what does it mean to mind your own business in personal finance? Minding your own business means to buy assets which create passive income for you without your personal presence and efforts. You can be an attorney, banker, engineer, or physician by profession, but you should mind your own business as well. The poor and middle class are conservative financially. They seek jobs and play safe because there is no depth in their asset column as compared to their liabilities. Consequently, they cannot take calculated risk. If they ever lose their job, their mortgaged house and car start to eat them alive. These mortgaged houses and cars are in essence a liability, not an asset. So the only way out of this rat race of get up, go for job, and pay bills is to buy assets which produce passive income. Income-producing real estate, stocks, commodities, and bonds are examples of such assets. Here is a world of advice especially for youngsters. You should firstly understand the difference between asset and liability. In the simplest and most effective words, assets produce income while liabilities increase your expenses. Mr. Smart has a complete video for you about asset and liability. Its link is given in the description below. Secondly, you should start minding your own business before it is too late. You should build your asset column before getting married, having kids, and buying a house. Otherwise, you would get entrapped in the rat race of get up, go for job, and pay bills. It is certainly good to have a high-paying job with good perks and privileges provided you are minding your own business by buying assets which make passive income for you. In fact, a high-paying job should enable you to pay yourself first and set aside a reasonable portion of monthly income to buy income-generating assets. That is the only way to keep the rat race away from you. Here you should be careful. Don't buy luxuries like expensive cars first. Rather, you should buy real assets which produce income which can in turn buy you luxuries. In this way, a high-paying job and income-producing assets will lead you to financial freedom. Go and lay the foundation of your own company only if you really want to own and run your own company along with the associated grind and hardships. The percentage of successful companies is painfully low. If you still want to own your company, don't hesitate to take a calculated risk. Otherwise, keep your high-paying job and mind your own business. Now, let us summarize what we've taught in this video. 1. If you want to become wealthy, you should mind your own business by buying assets which produce passive income for you without your personal presence and efforts. 2. The poor and middle class are reluctant to take even a calculated risk because they don't have depth in their asset column. 3. Youngsters should build their asset column before getting married, having kids, and buying a house. 4. Don't buy luxuries like expensive cars first. Rather, you should buy real assets which produce income, which can in turn buy you luxuries. Dear viewers, do you want to become wealthy? Are you currently employed with a high salary and good perks and privileges? Do you think that minding your own business can make you achieve your financial targets? Your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart are eager to hear from you in the comments section. Nothing is certain but death and taxes. Hatred of taxes for Americans dates back to its colonial past when Great Britain used to tax every consumer good. After independence from the British and their taxes, the Americans were made to pay taxes to the American government. Mr. Smart presents you a brief history of the evolution of taxes in the USA. In 1862, the American government introduced a progressive federal income tax to meet the Civil War expenses. Later in 1872, this tax was abolished. In 1894, the federal income tax resurfaced only to be declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court the very next year. The most important step in the U.S. tax history is the passage of the 16th Amendment. It was in the year 1913 that Congress introduced this amendment, which reads, "The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration." Later in 1943, Congress passed the Current Tax Payment Act, which obligated every employer to deduct federal income tax from the salary of an employee and pay it directly to the tax authorities. Afterwards, in 1953, the former Federal Bureau of Internal Revenue is renamed the Internal Revenue Service. This tax regime is based on Robin Hood folklore, to get from the rich and pay to the poor. As you have seen, initially there were no taxes in England and America. People only paid taxes if there was a war. England levied a regular income tax in 1874, while the United States levied it in 1913 with the adoption of the 16th Amendment. Governments popularized the taxation with the notion that only the rich would pay the taxes while the poor and middle class will be the beneficiary. That is exactly the Robin Hood tax system. The appetite of governments increased exponentially with time, so they taxed the poor and the middle class as well. These were the very people who voted for the tax regime. Consequently, the ultimate beneficiaries of this tax system were the government functionaries and the rich. Government officials received salaries and pensions from the tax money, while the corporations of the rich received heavy money from the government contracts. Income tax is levied in all countries around the globe except a few oil-rich countries. These countries include the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Bahrain. Dear viewers, do you think that the current tax regime in your country is just and well-balanced? Or do you think that your country's tax regime favors the rich? What changes would you suggest in the tax regime of your country? Your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart would love to hear from you in the comments section. In the last episode, Mr. Smart briefly discussed the tax history of the USA and explained how the poor and middle class get snared in the tax trap. Let us now see how the rich outsmarted this Robin Hood tax system. The rich knew about the powers of a corporation since the time of sailing ships. They used to create corporations, put a limited amount of money in it, and finance a voyage via their corporation. In this way, they limited their risk to the amount of money they put in that particular corporation. If the ship was lost and its crew lost their lives, the rich were liable to the limited money they initially put in the corporation. In this way, they secured their personal wealth in case of a disaster. In the modern days, the rich spend heavily from the pre-tax money of their corporation. Their visits to Las Vegas can be board meetings, insurance, car payments. Their health club and travel bills can be company expenses from pre-tax money. In this way, the rich have outsmarted the Robin Hood tax system. Here it is noteworthy that a corporation is simply a file with a few legal documents in it placed somewhere in an attorney's office. It is a legal entity which secures the rich. The appetite for governments for money has always been increasing because those government officials are considered more efficient who spend their budgeted funds completely. If they do not exhaust them, these funds will be squashed in the next budget. So the more government officials spend, the more efficient they are considered. Contrarily, in the private sector, doing more with limited money is appreciated. That is how the governments exploit the Robin Hood tax system for the advantage of government officials and the rich. This Robin Hood approach has backfired for the poor and middle class. The rich have outsmarted this tax system by hiring smart accountants and attorneys to exploit the loopholes which the politicians have made for the benefit of the rich. Dear viewers, do you think that this tax regime is fair and just? If not, what changes would you suggest in the tax regime of your country? Your fellow viewers and Mr. Smart are waiting for your opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button below. Don't hesitate if you have any question about personal finance. Moreover, let us know of which personal finance book you want reviewed next. Mr. Smart would love your questions and suggestions. Subscribe to your very own YouTube channel, Mr. Smart, and hit the bell button for notifications. It's totally free. Dear viewers, this animated review series is not a substitute of the original book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which Robert Kiyosaki has written like a story based on his own life. This book is the best-selling personal finance book of all times, with around 30 million copies sold in more than 100 countries. This book is translated in more than 50 languages. This book is a must-read for aspiring entrepreneurs who are currently entrapped in the rat race of get up, go to a job, and pay bills. Mr. Smart highly recommends you to thoroughly read this book. British philosopher and statesman Francis Bacon once said, "Some books should be tasted, some devoured, but only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly." Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one such phenomenal book which should be chewed and digested. You can find the link in the description for the audio version as well as the hard copy of this book.